Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Pieces of 8-Bit. Welcome to this week's video. And yeah, there you go, another weird advert from Sony. After last month's Nintendo 64 video, which was somewhat conservative, I thought, this is a good return to the kind of weird videos that we expect to see around consoles. And yeah, that's just one of many. I did actually see a video for advertising the PS9, and the idea being, of course, that it was the PS2 that starts it all. This is the beginning. It was the strapline, which I'll play it over when we're chatting on a bit later on in the next section. But yeah, that advert in particular, nothing to do with the console as far as I can tell, really. It's just weird, and it just works. A bit of viral marketing before maybe viral trends and all those kind of things were a thing. So some great marketing from Sony to launch the PlayStation 2 and to sell this wonderful platform. But yeah, this is of course the month with, and as part of my month with series, I take a console and I live with it for a month, and then I report back to you and tell you what it's been like to live with, and I talk a little bit about the history of it, and you know, like what some of the specs are and some of the games that I've been playing, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can get back into playing on that particular console, in this case obviously the PlayStation 2 as well. So probably just going to dive straight in with the first section. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history and how the PlayStation 2 fared, as if you don't know this already, and then we'll start digging into a little bit more detail on the specifications and some of the games as well. So without any further ado, let's step straight into that. Okay, so I mentioned that the PlayStation 2 was celebrating an anniversary. I certainly did at the start of this. I don't think I mentioned it in this video yet, but it is. It's celebrating 25 years this year. Now, it actually launched in Japan back in March, and as always, we had to wait until November. In fact, November the 24th was when it launched in 2000 in Europe. So that's why I'm sort of celebrating it this month, just because that's when it fitted, and I realised I hadn't talked about it yet, and I really should do for such an important console. Launched in the States, North America in October of the same year. So we didn't have to wait too long, not like some consoles where we've had to wait years, but in this particular instance we still had to wait a good 8 months, I suppose, before we got the PlayStation 2, and everybody was very, very excited about it when it finally arrived. And it was somewhat of a sensation. Ken Kutaragi, who is largely considered the father of PlayStation, spearheaded the development of it, which started in sort of around 97, 98. And the idea behind it was to have a supercomputer in your living room. That was the idea. The Emotion Engine was this just powerhouse of between it and the GPU and the wide buses, which we'll talk about a little bit. We'll touch on that in the next section, in the hardware section. But it was just able to shift data and polygons like you'd never really seen before up to that point. And bearing in mind, the PlayStation was the first of its generation to appear on the market before the GameCube and the Xbox. It was just incredible. Wasn't the most powerful in the end, but it definitely set an incredibly high bar. It was a huge leap in 3D. It was a massive generational leap between the original PlayStation and the PS2, and we haven't seen, I don't think we've seen that degree of leap from one generation to another that we saw from that sort of leap from PS1 to PS2. We saw quite a big leap between the 2 and the 3, and then a smaller one for the 4 and the 5, and then an even smaller one again between between 3 and the 4, and then between the 4 and the 5 a smaller leap again. And that is just the way of technology, right? The leaps were massive back in the 80s and 90s, but I think this was the last truly massive generational leap between consoles, and it just brought so much good stuff and so many good games. You know, we saw Gran Turismo, which I reviewed earlier on in the month. We saw GTA 3, which was and Vice City and San Andreas, which were PS2 exclusives to start with. Certainly GTA 3 was. The Metal Gear games, the God of War, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, Ico, which is a beautiful game. Shadow of the Colossus, another beautiful art house game, just pure art. And of course it brought the DVD into the living room as well, which meant that we had all of that home entertainment. Suddenly it was the first time people had really even seen DVD, which was a huge leap from VHS, let's face it. And of course all of these amazing things, all of these amazing games and this amazing technology, the fact that it came first off the back of the huge success of the original PlayStation meant that everybody wanted the PS2. And I didn't even mention the Dreamcast. I talked about the GameCube and the Xbox there, but the Dreamcast technically was in this generation as well, and it almost is a footnote, which is a shame. But people just didn't buy it because they knew the PlayStation 2 was around the corner. It was going to bring DVD, and it was just going to be this amazing development on top of what we'd seen in the PlayStation 1, which was, of course, also a massive game changer. So, yeah, it was huge, and the sales figures showed why it was huge. It's still the best-selling console of all time, bar none. It sold over 155 million units. It was an incredible feat. We've never seen anything come anywhere close to that. Well, the Switch has done okay, but even the Switch won't make that number. And yeah, it was pretty incredible. By comparison, the Xbox sold somewhere in the region of about 24 million, and the GameCube about 22 million. So you know, just a fraction of the amount of sales made by those two consoles. So Sony were just absolutely in their stride. And interestingly, the PlayStation 2 was not an easy console to develop for to start with, and it's probably the reason why we saw a real leap as that generation of console went on. From the beginning of the PlayStation 2's life to the end of the PS2's life, we really started to see people leveraging the true power of the unit, and we saw some incredible looking games. People were like, is this the same console? Like, how is this a thing? It was incredible. And of course, let's not also forget, PlayStation 1, very, very popular, and the PS2 could play pretty much every original PlayStation game on there as well. So it meant that you didn't need to go out and keep your original PlayStation. You could get rid of the original PlayStation. All your PS1 games would work on there. And of course, Xbox was brand new. There was no Xbox before it, and GameCube was not backwardly compatible. So this was a real big thing as well. And I think it's a real shame that Sony didn't properly continue that. They did it to start with the PS3, but that was pretty short-lived, and it was emulated as well in Europe. Only Japan got the full backward compatible hardware with the original PlayStation 3. So I think it's a shame that Sony didn't stick with that. And of course, we now see it now with the PS5 backwardly compatible with the PS4, which is a welcome return for Sony as well. And I remember being very critical of that to Xbox owners when they were going to, there was talk about not being backwardly compatible, and then Sony kind of ditched it as well. So it was a bit of a shame. All right, okay, so that is a bit of the background. It was an amazing, amazing machine. Let's talk about that hardware and just how influential it was, and just how powerful a machine it was, and how powerful that entire generation was as well, in the next section. See you there. Right, let's talk hardware. I've got my trusty iPad with all my specifications on it, so I got this to reference rather than looking up to the board every 2 seconds. It means I can have a little bit more detail on here, so I can talk about the three. I'm going to do what I did with the N64 and talk about the three kind of main players in this generation. I'm not going to be talking about the Dreamcast. Sorry to all the Sega fans out there, and don't get me wrong, I love the Dreamcast, but I just wanted to talk about the other two, the Xbox and the GameCube, largely for time, but also because I think it's quite interesting. They came a little bit later, but certainly when people think of this generation, as the main sellers, they think of the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, and the GameCube, of course. So let's dive straight in with the specifications on these three then. So obviously, they all came out at different times. So we had the PlayStation 2 came out in 2000, the Xbox came out in 2001, and the GameCube 2001 and 2002 in Europe, in fact. So within a year or two of each other, all pretty close. But this is where it starts to get quite interesting, because the PlayStation 2, obviously, as we mentioned, sold 155 million units versus 25 million Xboxes and 24 million Xboxes and 22 million GameCube. So significantly more. But when you look at the specifications on here, and we found this a little bit with the N64 as well. You looked on the specifications of the N64, and it was light years ahead, on paper at least, of its rivals, but it wasn't the best seller by far. Certainly it was a second to the PlayStation at least. Yeah, let's talk about the CPUs to start with, as we normally do. So the PlayStation 2 had the very famous Emotion Engine, which was a 128-bit processor running at 294 megahertz. So there's that number to remember there, 294 megahertz. The Xbox essentially was a cut-down PC, and it was always my criticism a little bit of the Xbox, that it failed for me in the beginning, and I've talked about the Xbox subsequently, and I do think it is a good machine, but I think at the time everyone was like, well, there's not really much imagination here, because the Xbox just had an Intel Pentium 3, which is an off-the-shelf processor, copper mine processor, which was running though at 733 megahertz, so more than double the clock speed of the PlayStation 2. And in the middle we had the humble GameCube, which was running an IBM PowerPC, also kind of an off-the-shelf processor here, the IBM PowerPC Gecko, which was running at 485 megahertz. So both of its competitors were quicker in terms of clock speed on paper. It's not the whole story, because one of the things with the PlayStation 2 certainly was its ability to be able to shift data around at an enormous rate, a very wide bus. So even if the processor itself might not have been as quick, that didn't necessarily tell the whole story. GPU, so graphics processor, we had the graphics synthesizer running at 147 megahertz. We had an NVIDIA NV2A on the Xbox running at 233 megahertz, not wildly different. And the ATI flipper running at 162 megahertz on the Nintendo GameCube. So not a huge amount in terms of on-paper clock speed, but certainly the relationship between the CPU and the GPU was the big winner for the PlayStation. That ability to be able to shift data around across that architecture at enormous speeds, which meant that it was very good at it was more powerful than it appeared to be on paper. That definitely was a big help. In terms of main RAM, again, the Xbox pips it, so we were 32 megabytes of Rambus main memory in the PlayStation 2, 64 megabytes of DDR SD RAM on the Xbox. So again, you know, we've got that Intel Pentium 3, the NVIDIA graphics card, DDR SD RAM on the for the memory for the Xbox. Very much sounding like a PC spec here. And then we had 24 megabytes of 1T SRAM plus 16 megabytes of auxiliary DRAM on the Nintendo GameCube, which is basically about 40 megabytes of RAM on there as well. Video RAM, or VRAM, was obviously integrated on the PlayStation 2, part of the GSE EDRAM. The Xbox was 64 meg shared, and the video RAM on the Nintendo GameCube was 3 megabytes embedded. Doesn't really tell us a great deal, that really there, I suppose. Storage media, the PlayStation 2 had the DVD-ROM, a big seller, obviously 4.7 gigabytes available on a DVD. The Xbox was able to read dual layer DVD-ROMs, which meant that it had a theoretical capacity of 9.4 meg, so you got a lot more on the discs on the Xbox. And then of course the Nintendo GameCube, which I think was one of its big problems, was the fact that it had this mini disc style disc, which was only capable of 1.5 gig, which I think, you know, a proprietary standard again in a Nintendo console really didn't help its case, especially when you could play DVDs on your Xbox or your PlayStation and you couldn't on your GameCube. It was just a gaming platform. Internal storage, and now this is where the Xbox really romps home in terms of specifications. We had those at 8 megabyte cards initially. You can buy bigger ones now, but 8 megabyte cards for internal storage for your saves. And of course the Xbox had that 8 to 10 gigabyte internal hard drive, which is the first console to really do that, and that was not an insignificant addition. And a lot of people who were big Xbox fans at the time were like, why would you not want that? And of course we know that we could get the hard drive adapter for the PlayStation 2 later on, but that was an additional paid for add-on. But like, for me, I never felt that I needed it, to be honest. But yeah, it was one of those things that people really did rave about on the Xbox. And then we had the same sort of setup on the GameCube as the PlayStation, with those memory cards as well. In terms of maximum resolution, and again, the Xbox really wins out here. 480p, and there were some that were capable of 1080i, although I've never seen that on a PlayStation 2, but apparently that is a thing. But the Xbox was actually capable of 720p or 1080i, so early HD resolution on the Xbox was possible, and again on the GameCube 480p. So what we're seeing here, as you probably can tell already, is that the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube not wildly different in terms of specification. The Xbox on paper, significantly more powerful, with a lot more options, with that hard drive storage, with the better resolution. It's surprising really in some ways that it didn't do better, but we kind of know the reasons in history why that was the case. In terms of audio, we had 48 channel ADP-CM. Now, I remember being able to plug, in fact, I'm pretty sure, if I look on the back here, yes, there is a little optical port. So I remember playing DVDs on here and having, I'm sure I had 5.1. I'm sure I had 5.1. It doesn't say that here, but I was pretty sure I played movies in 5.1. Never mind. But we definitely had Dolby Digital 5.1 on the Xbox, and we had 16/48 kilohertz stereo and Dolby Pro Logic 2 on the GameCube, which does sound really good. Pro Logic 2 is sort of like it's not quite 5.1. It kind of, if you send a Pro Logic 2 signal to a 5.1 amp, it sort of figures it out as kind of 5.1. It's a bit, it's weird. It's good though. The sound quality on the GameCube is very, very good, but not as good as the others. And I suppose that I expect that might be something down to storage. You haven't got to store 6 channels of audio on the GameCube discs. And of course, in terms of strengths and weaknesses, so PlayStation 2, huge library, massive library of games, and that was definitely a big help. And you'll hear me say the phrase, if you watch these videos, you'll know what the phrase is going to be when I talk about games in a minute. So huge library, DVD playback, massive. That was a big deal. I remember buying the PS2. For a lot of people, this was their first DVD experience. And what a step up from VHS that was. That's like going from audio tape to CD. You know, it was a huge leap, and so much better. And of course, many people hadn't got a DVD player. They were quite expensive back then, believe it or not. And a lot of people just bought a PS2, and then it's like, oh, we got a DVD player thrown in for free. And it was fully backward compatible with PS1, so it meant that you had all of that library of PS1 games as well. So if you had a lot of PS1 games, you didn't have to chuck them away, you didn't have to keep your PS1, you could just play them all on the PS2. It was fantastic. Xbox strengths, well, of course, it was the most powerful hardware, as we've discovered here. Built-in hard drive, again, massive thing, and it had the best online. Online really came to the PlayStation 2 later with the adapter. But Xbox was online out of the box, and it really, I think really the Xbox was the proper true pioneer of online gaming on a console. Sony came to the game a little bit late. It was still good. We had it on the Dreamcast as well. It was, again, still good. We had a little bit on the Nintendo GameCube. Again, it was okay. But the Xbox really went for that, and that was that was their market. That was their USP for sure. And then on the GameCube, exceptional memory bandwidth, very efficient GPU, and the GameCube does look very, very good. If you play GameCube games, the games do look fantastic, even now. And it had, of course, its strong first-party output, so it's a Nintendo console, so a lot of good first-party games. But, of course, as we know, and we'll discover in a second, not so many of the third-party games. In terms of weaknesses then, and this is the last bit, I promise you, the PS2 was actually the weakest hardware of the three. It's crazy to think that a console that sold so many units on paper was the weakest. And it wasn't just on paper, it was the weakest. And I mean, what I've also mentioned here is that it only had 2 controller ports as well. The other 2, the Xbox and the GameCube, both had 4. This only had 2 as well, so you know, a lot of negatives really in terms of hardware spec, generally speaking, but that didn't matter because it was all about the titles. The Xbox's biggest weakness was it was just massive. It was a huge console. It's incredibly heavy. It's an absolute behemoth. It's not a pretty looking machine. It had a much smaller library, and it had a pretty short lifespan. It wasn't long. Bearing in mind that we saw it in 2001, the Xbox 360 came out a few years later, and really it felt like a bit of an experiment, the OG Xbox for Microsoft. You know, can we do it? Can we have a go with this console market? And they proved that they could. Yeah, it was a pretty short life for the original Xbox there. And then, of course, for the GameCube, well, quite a lot, unfortunately, in here. We had that very small list of third-party releases. We had that small disc, which was just a big problem. It was just a big problem. Everyone was like, Nintendo, why did you do that? It just didn't make any sense. Yeah, there just was, that meant that you had multi-disc releases as well, which was just, people just didn't want that in 2001, 2002. People just didn't want that. So it did limit the machine quite a lot, and it's a shame because the GameCube is a very capable box and it is a lovely little machine, as you would have seen from my month with a few months back. I really enjoyed getting the GameCube out and playing on that again, but it sold the least out of the three, and I think Nintendo were a bit complacent going into it, and they shouldn't have been, because the N64 was not exactly a rip-roaring success either. It did a lot better, but it was a bit of a decline for Nintendo really at this point, in terms of their home consoles, for sure. So there you go, that is the hardware, and yeah, hopefully that gave you a bit of a flavour. It's quite interesting in as much as obviously the PlayStation 2 just wasn't the most powerful machine out there, in the same way that the PlayStation 1 was not the most powerful in its generation either. But it's not always about the hardware. That's the reality, and I'm going to say a phrase in a minute, and for those of you who watch this channel, you'll know what that phrase is going to be as we get on and talk about the games on the PS2 and what I've been playing this month. Right, here it comes. I'm going to say it. The games make the console. And I said it in the N64 one. I said it's absolutely true of the N64 that the games totally made the N64. And the PlayStation 2, that statement is even more relevant and even more true, because as I just mentioned in the previous section, it was the least powerful console out of the three. And yeah, it was really the titles that made it. And it was off the back of the success of the PlayStation. People knew what was possible, and they just were so excited about it, and so there were so many third-party titles on the PlayStation 2 that just meant it was just a winner from the get-go, and that support continued for years. It had a long life cycle and thousands of titles. I'm not sure the exact number, but it is thousands of titles. So yeah, if you're looking to get a complete set of any particular consoles games, I wouldn't necessarily recommend going for the PlayStation 2, because you might be doing it for the rest of your life, and you still may never quite get there. So what have I been playing this month? Well, a slight confession to make, and that is that I have had the PlayStation 2 in the living room for a little more than a month. I have a PS2 Slim. So my trusty PlayStation 2 that I bought when it first came out, which still works. It is an absolute workhorse, and I love this machine, but this tends to sit it's sort of out to pasture really. I don't tend to use this very much, because I've got the little PS2 Slim in the living room, which is just hooked up permanently, and I absolutely adore it. It is it's brilliant. I actually prefer, in terms of PlayStation versus PlayStation, I actually prefer the original PlayStation to the Slim, yeah, it's great just having a PS2 hooked up in there all the time. I've got quite a few PS2 games, not as many as some I might add. Yeah, so I have been playing it for a little bit more than a month. I'll just try and talk about some of the games I've been playing this month. I'll just give a bit of a flavour of some of the things. A lot of it you will have seen already in the bit between. So we're going to start with Gran Turismo. Any self-respecting PlayStation fan is going to be playing Gran Turismo. We played 3 and 4. And in fact actually did a bit of a comparison just a little over a week and a half ago, on which is best. Is it GT3 or GT4? Because they're both brilliant and they both bring something a bit different. But GT3, when I first saw GT3 on the PlayStation 2, as you'll have seen in my review of it the other day, it just blew my mind. It was incredible. Like, it just looked so realistic compared to anything I'd ever seen before. Any game that I'd ever seen before. It just looked fantastic. So had a bit of time with GT3 and GT4 and played those with the GeForce wheel as well, which was great fun to get back to. I'm so glad I kept that, because I tried to sell it on several occasions and couldn't, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't now, because it was great to go back and play those games with a wheel as well. Obviously we talked about some of the mascots, so we talked about Jak and Daxter, and we talked about Ratchet and Clank, and we talked about Sly Cooper, so played all 3 of those games. Probably my favourite out of all of those 3 is Ratchet and Clank. A really, really fabulous game. It's just aged so well. Lots of great adventure and exploration. Loads of fantastic weapons, great characters, humour, all of that kind of stuff. It's really, really good. Played quite a bit of Sly Cooper as well, and the Thievius Raccoonus, or just Sly Cooper, I think it's just called. Sly Raccoon might be, I think, the EU version. Again, a really, really nice game. I think that's aged really, really well with that cel-shaded graphics. Spoke quite a lot about that in the bit between, about how those cel-shaded graphics now, whilst a little bit maligned in some games like Wind Waker on the GameCube back in the day, actually means that those games have probably aged better than most. They just look fantastic. Played a bit of Midnight Club at the beginning of the month, which was in my bit between, but none of you would know that because nobody watched it. It was that was really good fun, and it was a great test bed for GTA 3, and you kind of knew if you got a Midnight Club game, you kind of knew what was coming in GTA. Great Rockstar games, really good fun, street racing, lots of neon, driving around cities at night time. It's just really, really good fun, and it came before the Need for Speed titles and all that kind of thing, the underground titles. It was just a great game, and I really enjoyed playing that as well. Played obviously Shadow of the Colossus, and did I play a bit of Ico? I have played a bit of Ico, but probably not in this month. But Shadow of the Colossus, a beautiful game, a haunting game, and just a piece of art encapsulated into a PlayStation game. Quite challenging. Beautiful soundtrack, and Ico is the same. Ico is very, very much the same. Not the same game, obviously, but very, very similar in terms of its development. Developed by the same studio, and absolutely fantastic. Both of those games are absolutely fantastic. They look amazing, and they are just art on a DVD. It is just absolutely fantastic. What else have I played? Well, of course, I had my accessories section, so I talked a little bit about some of the games in there. So we played a bit of Burrs, and we played a bit of SingStar, and we played a bit of Dance Mat. All of those games as well, with all of the many, many accessories that you could buy for the PlayStation 2. So that's been really, really good fun as well. And actually, even for the PlayStation 1 racer challenges, I've been using the PS2 for doing a little bit of practice and playing the games in the living room, just putting them in there to have a look at them and see how they play. So there's been loads, and I could just go on. There's been so many other games that I've played as well. Played Tiger Woods 04, which is my favourite of the PGA games. I played The Simpsons Hit and Run. Really enjoyed that, actually. Played that actually quite a bit, Simpsons Hit and Run. I played GTA 3, bit of GTA Vice City. Not played San Andreas because I haven't had time, given all of the list of the other things that I've played. So much good stuff to play on the PlayStation 2, and so many of the games are still incredibly playable now. And I would definitely recommend going and having another look at the PS2 if you haven't done already. So there you go. Those are all the games I've been playing this month. Those and many more. And I will continue to play games on the PS2 because it will be staying in the living room, plugged into the TV forever, because it is just not something that should be put away, in my opinion. So there you go. All right, so if any of that took your interest, let's talk in the next section about how you can get back into PlayStation 2 gaming in 2025. Okay, so if all of those games took your interest and you're thinking, I really, really want to get back into PS2 gaming, well, this is the section that should hopefully give you all the information that you need to do that. Now, as I go from one console to the next, from 1 month to the next, then this section tends to be pretty samey. It's the same recommendations that I'll make, but maybe they're in a slightly different order depending on what it is that you want. So sometimes I might say, go for the emulator. That's the best way to get back into it. If you've got the games, it's just a better option. And in this particular case, I think the best way to get back into PS2 is to go and get a PS2. They're great machines. This is my original machine. It's getting on for 25 years old now. It's a fantastic machine, and they're more complicated this generation than the previous generations. There are moving parts in here, and the drawer that comes out, and there's more connections and more things that could go wrong with it. But touch wood, this has been an absolute workhorse of a machine, and I love it. I love the look of the PS2. I think it's a great looking machine. They're workhorses, and they just keep on going. And with the right amount of care and attention, given the occasional vacuum to get rid of some of the dust and whatever, then that's a good shout. And you can pick an original PlayStation 2 up for getting on for between sort of £70 and £100 for a good one, and there's lots of special editions and things out there as well. Of course, you can go for a PS2 Slim, which is probably a better bet if you're just wanting to get into PlayStation 2. They're going to be a bit more robust, they're a little bit newer, there's less to go wrong with them, there's less moving parts in them, and they're very, very small as well, so they don't take up a lot of space. I mean, they're just a fraction of the size of this one here. So, but yeah, the best way to do it, get an original PlayStation 2. Loads of games to buy, and a lot of games for the PlayStation 2 are also quite cheap. So you can pick up some real classics. Some of the more hard to find games, obviously a little bit more expensive, but you can go and find games on a PlayStation 2 really easily. And the other reason why you might want the hardware is because if you watch my video, which not that many people did, please go watch my video on accessories a few weeks ago. There are loads of accessories. So you've got things like the iToy, the buzzers, the SingStar mics, Guitar Hero, all of those things, steering wheel, any of those kind of things that you want to play, then you're going to need the physical hardware to do it. You're probably not going to want to put it in front of a PC with an emulator on it. You're probably going to struggle to get them to work, and it's probably not going to be the best place to do it. You want it in your TV, on your TV, in your living room, and then you'll be able to play it as well. So one suggestion, and I quite often recommend these, is get yourself a Rad2X adapter. The PlayStation 2 one is powered, so you'll need a USB connection for that. But the nice thing about that is you can run it in RGB mode, which will give you that 480p resolution on your TV. It scales it really, really nicely. PS2 games look great on the big TV with the Rad2X, and that works really, really well. The only thing you can't do is play DVDs. And I bought the DVD remote to show in my accessories section. It wasn't that expensive, thankfully. And all my DVDs were rendering green, and it's a copy protection thing, basically. It's to do with if you're playing them on RGB, it just doesn't work. It puts on some copy protection, makes all your DVDs green, which means that you can't use them. And the annoying thing is I can't use the remote with this. So this one doesn't have the IR receiver in it. The Slim does, but I can't play the DVDs on it on the big TV. And this one doesn't have the IR receiver, so I could play it through this, but DVDs might be green on there as well. Actually, I haven't even tried it, so not all that useful, the DVD remote. But to be honest with you, I've got a PS5 in the living room, so I can put DVDs on there. It really isn't that much of a problem. And let's face it, people aren't watching that many DVDs these days anyway. So get yourself a Rad2X and yourself and a PlayStation 2. You can, of course, just use the composite output as well, with support component and composite. And you can use something like an OSSC as well to run that through. But I think the Rad2X has given me the best results out of all of those things there. So that's getting yourself an original PlayStation. The other option is to get yourself onto the emulator. So if you've got a load of games and you want to do some gameplay, but you don't want to set the PlayStation 2 up, or you don't own a PlayStation 2 anymore, then there is a really good emulator option, which is PCSX2. And it is a fantastic emulator. It is really good, and it's really easy to set up. I use it with my PS4 controller. I literally paired this with my Apple Mac, and it just worked. And of course, if you're using a wireless controller like that as well, a PlayStation, proper genuine PlayStation controller, it just maps all the buttons to the right places, and it just works. It's so good. And there's lots and lots of options on it for adjusting graphics, and certain games you can kind of crank it up a little bit more, get it to run a little bit more smoothly. So it is a really, really, really good emulator. I cannot recommend it enough. It's one of the best emulators out there, in my opinion, for all the consoles. PCSX2, really, really good. Doesn't need lots of power. I don't find it struggle too much. I've not tried it on the Raspberry Pi, to be honest, and I imagine it may struggle on there. But it's only a Raspberry Pi 4. Maybe on the 5 it might work better. But on my home PC, on my Mac, it works an absolute treat, and it plays as well as it would do on the PlayStation 2. So that is your other option. And then the third and final option, of course, is to get yourself onto PSN. There are quite a few PlayStation 2 games on the PlayStation 2. I think if you get the premium, certainly you'll find them. I don't know about the other two tiers, but you'll find them on there as well. Obviously, that is quite expensive. But there is quite a lot of stuff on there. There's some PS3 titles as well, but not loads of choice. Your best option, in my opinion, get yourself an actual physical PS2, and I would definitely suggest getting the Slim. If you're not worried about the full authentic experience, get yourself a PS2 Slim, because it just doesn't take up a lot of space, and you can just leave it plugged in forevermore. So there you go. That is how you get yourself back into PlayStation 2 in 2025. Well, What do I think it's been like to live with the PlayStation 2 for a month? As if I needed to tell you. Come on people. You know me by now. Anybody who watches this channel knows by now that this is my favourite console of all time. This was never going to be a difficult month. And you know also, as I've mentioned already, that I have a PS2 permanently hooked up in my living room because it is just so good. And it's a weird one because I've got an Xbox and I've got a GameCube sitting behind the camera up here. And they are fabulous consoles, and I've got a Dreamcast sitting down there as well. All great consoles, actually. I like them all. To be honest with you, there aren't many consoles that I don't like. But this, for me, is just my favourite. And the reason why it's my favourite is, one, because of all the titles we mentioned before, because there is just so much good stuff on it. Two, because it was just a huge generational leap. And three, because for me, this was the first brand new console that I ever bought with my own money that I earned in a job. So it has a certain fond place in my heart as well, on top of all of that, because I did own a PlayStation 1, but it was a second-hand console. And as for those of you who know me, I played a lot of other people's consoles and computers back in the day, and I was more of a PC gamer because that's what we had at home, really up until sort of the mid-late 90s. Then it was PlayStation 1 for a bit, and then I bought this brand new, and I bought my special edition GT3, and I remember buying it on the day as well. It was a bit of an impulse buy. Do you know what? I'm going to buy one of those PlayStation 2s. Some friends that I lived with in the house that I was living in bought PS2, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so amazing. And so decided to buy one as a bit of an impulse buy. And I was in town with my girlfriend, my now wife, and I went into game and I picked up my PlayStation. It cost me £200. Bought the special edition one. It hadn't been out long, only maybe a month or two, and we got tickets for the cinema that day, and we went and sat in the cinema, and I had this. It was just like, it was sitting there. I was like a kid with a new toy, you know, like when your parents tell you not to open their new toys in the car because you lose all the bits. It was like I was just staring at this console, desperate to get home and get and play it, because I just knew how powerful it was going to be. So it has a real fond place in my heart as well from a memory perspective. But really, the main reason for me why I love this console and why I think it is probably the greatest console ever is just that sheer list of titles. So even if you aren't a Sony fan, even if you aren't a PlayStation fan, you could not deny the sheer volume of titles that were available for it. And there were some amazing games on there. And yeah, there might have been some cross-title ones that were better on the GameCube or better on the Xbox, for sure. But neither of those consoles had the sheer catalogue of games that you got on here. And of course, this was the first place that we saw Grand Theft Auto as well, Grand Theft Auto 3. It was a PlayStation 2 exclusive to start with for quite a while. And so, you know, it was us PlayStation owners, our Sony PS2 owners, that were the first to play GTA 3, which was, for me, in the same way that the PlayStation 2 was a groundbreaking moment in gaming history, so was GTA 3. It was a deal breaker for me. It was the game that I'd always wanted to play, and I got to play it on the PS2. So I adored this machine, and it sold 155 million units for good reason. And yeah, it continues to be, I think, probably one of the most important moments in gaming, certainly in console history. So there you go. Yeah, kind of like it. Summary: Andy likes it. Probably a bit too much, gushing a little bit here. And like I said, I don't have any problem. You know, don't hate on me. I don't have any problem with the Xbox. I used to. I don't now. I've definitely come to respect the Xbox for what it was and what Microsoft were trying to achieve at the time. I love the Dreamcast, and I always loved the Dreamcast. I loved the Dreamcast before the PS2 came out. I lived with someone who had a Dreamcast, and I had a lot of good times playing on that. Crazy Taxi and Ready to Rumble, boxing and things like that. Some fantastic games on there, and I love it, and I still love it. And I love the GameCube. I had a GameCube as well. So when I didn't have an Xbox, but I did have a GameCube. And when the GameCube came out, I bought that, and I enjoyed it a lot. But I'll tell you what, when I came to play a game, 9 times out of 10, I'd be switching this bad boy on and not the GameCube. So it's just because there were just so many games to play. So there you go. Anyway, I'll stop yappering about it now. I think I just made up a word. I have really enjoyed this month, and you should definitely go back and revisit the PS2 if you haven't done already. It is great. So the important moment has come we're now going to be talking about what console I'm going to be playing next month as we run up towards Christmas. So a bit of a drum roll for this one, and this console, if you haven't worked it out already, if you saw my bit between in the week, you may have already figured that out. This console is celebrating its 20th birthday just at the end of last month, and that console is the Xbox 360. So this is my Xbox 360. This is one of the newer ones. There's about 4 models of these, and this is another console that I never owned back in the day. I'll pop it over there. I have really grown to quite like the 360. It's actually really quite a decent little console, and it was the one that actually made Sony slightly nervous. I think they had a bit of a misstep with the PS3. I have no problem with the PS3. I like the PS3. But Sony had a bit of a misstep with the PS3 for a lot of reasons, which we'll explore as we go through the month. But the Xbox 360 nearly did it. The Xbox 360 was the Xbox that nearly outsold the PlayStation. It didn't. It was very, very close, and largely considered to be one of the most fondly. It's one of the most sort of most fondly liked. Most highly regarded, maybe that's a better word, Xbox out there from Microsoft. So it is a really good machine. I bought the newer one. This has got HDMI on it, so it'll be a bit easier to play. Now it is going to be interesting through this month because there aren't any Xbox 360 emulators that I can use for doing my recording, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but we will see. You will have seen retrospectively how that's been, because I'll record the bit between the bit between will go, the recording will be after I've made this recording, but will go out before. So we'll see, and you'll probably hear me talk about how it's been trying to get Xbox 360 games working and recording as well. But we'll see. There are ways and means. We'll figure it out. So there you go. That is the Xbox 360. That is coming up. So obviously we're going to have a month of focus on that. Yeah, that's probably it. Those are the main things really coming up. We've obviously got another PS1 Racer Challenge due imminently, but yes, that is it for this month. So I hope you enjoyed my PS2 month with retrospective. If you do enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button. And yeah, I am excited to get stuck in with the 360, and of course I don't even have to put the PS2 away, which is fantastic. So that's great too. So yes, I think that's it then. So just leaving to say, please do all take care of yourselves. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll keep saying it. You have to just keep doing it. Well, you can only do it once, right? I don't know. Please do all take care of yourselves nonetheless. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.